Hey, welcome back. I'm Yvonne Wakefield, and this is my YouTube channel. We also have a podcast where I read from my books. I'm reading right now from Babe in the Woods. The first one, Building a Life One Log at a Time. And subsequently, we'll go through the second book, Babe in the Woods Self-Portrait, and Babe in the Woods Path of Totality. These are all books you can buy anywhere books are sold. They're also on audiobooks. Tell your local librarian to get them on audiobooks, because when I do readings, people say, I have eye problems and I can't read a book. Are they on audio? Yes, they're on audio. They're on Kindle. They're wherever books are sold. So it's this story evolving about my time in this log cabin that I built when I was 18, that I'm still being in my 60s. And I was there last week. And I had this monumental thing happen just this morning. I was there last week cutting branches down at the creek, and it was too condensed to use like a really, my 24-inch bar chainsaw on these just small diameter trees. So I was using this little saw, and I was using these like clipper things, and it was a lot of work. So when I came back, I saw this, you know how you get these ads on your Facebook pages or whatever? So I saw this ad for this little baby chainsaw. And I just got it this morning. It's called T-Talk. And it runs on a battery. And I've never, except for a flashlight, ever had anything on a battery up at the cabin. But there's this battery. I'm going to charge it. I'm going to go up to the I'm going to the cabin Thursday, in one day. Ooh, I figure out how tight that thing is. And I'm going to use this little T-Talk to clear out some brush around the road. But it's also good because when I'm going up to the cabin, if there's a tree across the road, I could use this a little bit to cut from one side, cut from another side. So I'll let you know how this is going to work. It's an innovation for me. All right, so last week we were in chapter 19, If the Tool Fits. No, were we in 18 or 19, Arturo? Recap, no, we were in 19, Tool Fits. So I was learning how to use tools, like I'm going to learn to use this tool, to notch the notches on the logs on the cabin. And the guys I were working with were using these big axes and they wouldn't work for me. So I figured out if I used a little small hatchet, I could do it better. So this chapter 20, I'm kind of talking about my siblings who were in and out of my life. And if you recall, I stayed in this like little teeny crummy shack while I was building the cabin for just a few months before I moved up on my property and lived in a little pup tent. And this is where this chapter comes into play, because it's in June and I'm building the log cabin and it's pouring rain. I'm working in the pouring rain. I come back at night in my pup tent, and the pup tent is full of rain, and it's so rainy you can't even get a fire going, and it was miserable. So one morning I woke up, and it was too rainy to work. So I laid in the tent for a while, and this is chapter 20. Tears in a bucket. Insufferable rain continues for 2 days, and building is stopped because of it. Brad is content to nurse the wound he won't talk about and read out the storm in his tent. This gives me time to catch up on my own reading and sleep. By noon of the first day, I'm rested, have exhausted my reading supply, and am tired by a cat that kneads my chest, sucks the buttons on my shirt until the surrounding fabric becomes as damp as the fly tarp. My sister, she bought that property below me, and she bought that old cabin. My sister, I'm sure, is in the leaky old cabin half a mile below, and most likely there will be a fire in the wood stove. I fill my knapsack with sketchbook, journal, and pencils, hoping to use them in a place warmer and drier than my saturated tent. It is pouring so hard, Tamarack, that's the name of the cat, Tamarack doesn't even try to follow me. I leave the flap unzipped just a bit. The cotton hat is soaked as I am by the time I reach the old cabin, and the sketchbook in my knapsack is damp. I'm taking water off my rain jacket before opening the cabin door when my brother opens it first. Howdy! He spits snooze, a habit he's taken up since I saw him 2 weeks before. Hi! Nice mustache, I point to another growing attraction. Flushed out by rain and loneliness, Mark left the mess he is trying to build to spend time with his youngest sister, the only one of us three with a solid roof to share. I know this roof. I have cursed this roof and patched it with plastic and tar paper. Today, familiar aluminum nesting pots I left behind when I moved out are spaced around the floor to catch the drips. Mark returns with an armload of wood, opens the firebox, stokes it, and sits in a ratty green rocker, which has appeared since my last visit a week before. Earlier that week, Anne returned from a trip to Minnesota with a truck bed full of silver, crystal, and china she had taken out of the family storage unit. I'd helped her unload the boxes filled with memories of our brighter days and arranged them on an old cabin's musty shelves. All that shine and sparkle looked incongruous to the dingy space, but the plates and goblets had a place to reflect the caliber of our family again. Nice chair, I turned to Anne, who stirs something in one of the aluminum pots on the counter beside the stove. Bought it for $2 at a garage sale. Want some? She turns her eyes from one pot to offer me another, picks up a joint, smoldering in a chip plate on the peeling linoleum counter, and takes a hit and holds it out to me. No thanks. She exhales and points the fat number towards my brother. Want some? She exhales. 232, Mark pauses. Yep. Anne walks over to the 8-bit chair my brother is sitting in and hands him the joint. He's been doing that off and on all morning. Anne nods to Mark. 236, 237. Mark takes a break to take a hit. What? That, Anne points to the empty coffee can below his feet, counting drips. She returns to his work and our brother to his calculations. 284. I sit on the warped floor, pull off my soggy boots and socks, and place them directly behind the hot stove where they have worked up a sweat to dry so many times before. The symphony plays on, rain on the roof, fire crackling in the wood box, percussion of drops ringing metal, the meddling smell of smoke and baking sweets. My brother counting leaks out loud. 409. My sister, smoking and stirring, explains sometimes he loses count. She holds out a wooden spoon filled with cookie dough. Want some? The company is cordial, though definitely not a Norman Rockwell kind of scene. The image of this family gathering more likely to make it as a trailer for Reefer Madness than end up on the cover of Saturday Evening Post. Still, I cherish any time the three of us share together without one of us sobbing, screaming, or bleeding out. Even the absurdity between how we were raised and how we all ended up in a rat-infested cabin during a rainstorm on an Oregon mountain so far from our middle-class Catholic roots warms my heart. Anne has stoked the stove cherry hot to bake a second batch of oatmeal raisin and chocolate chip cookies in the oven. Something bubbles in a Dutch oven on the stovetop. Ew! Porcupine stew, Mark replies after I lift the lid and gag. Brownish gray lumps and chunks churn and burp in broth that looks and smells like the murk inside a muskrat lodge in the dog days of summer. Shot him yesterday with my .22, skinned him at my place, kept him cool in the creek, then brought him over here. Mark looks at the floor. 482. Ping! 483. Ping! There's barley and black beans in there too. He takes a long hit, exhales, listens. Ping! 638, he says, scratches his head and looks at me. Damn! You made me lose count. I back away from the stove and then climb barefoot into the loft. Anne has recently redecorated with garage sale pillows and orange checkered curtains. Downpour Symphony in D major, opus 28 for opposing weather fronts conducts itself loudly overhead in this one spot where the roof does not leak. Sweets baking, gamey meat, and wood smoke waft up as I settle in the loft, open the sketchbook to the middle where the pages aren't buckled with damp, and draw the valley view from the one small window. When the cookies are done, Anne tosses one up, and I catch it like a hot rivet, moving it from hand to hand until it is cool enough to bite. After I've eaten a half a dozen, my hands are warm, and I'm stuffed and through with drawing. Lethargically, I grunt down the ladder to exhibit my labors. It stinks, says Mark, getting back to work, filling an onyx bowl. Sucks, says Anne, turning away from my colored pencil drawing. She stirs raisins, chocolate chips, and peanut butter into a new batch of cookie batter. So much for constructive criticism. I climb back up into the loft, then write in my journal. Soon my little family joins me. We pass the bowl, laughing more each time it makes a round. We have never laughed together like this before. It is the sound of the color of we have made it through. The three of us survived the shake-up, the shakedown, the backroom deals that fleeced and separated us. We found our way back together again to a place where we can hide in forests from intrusions and laugh under a sad roof where together we feel at home. Still, despite everything we've lost, I've still hung on to the Catholic guilt, feeling fortunate to own land, and I bring this to the attention of my stoned siblings. You know, I say, accepting the pipe from Anne and then passing it to Mark, we are really privileged to be able to own land. Very, very, very privileged indeed. Mark twists his mustache, positioning it in an imaginary monocle while attempting an English accent. Righto, and pip-pip and all that sort. Anne extends her pinky from the coffee mug in her hand, takes a hit and holds her breath, but a brotherly jab makes her lose it. Stop it! She yells at Mark. No, you stop it! And he pokes her putty belly again. I distance myself from escalating shenanigans and climb down the pole ladder. You know, we are really privileged to own land, I repeat, seated in the dusty green rocker, my words met with unexpected silence. I look up at the loft floor from where I sit, trying to correct the perspective in my colored pencil drawing. The silence turns to whispers, and I see why. Two pairs of pink lips move like slugs along the flooring slats. Strands of spittle fall, landing on my shoulder and thigh. You little pigs! I sit up, wipe off spit with the back of my hand and grab a wooden spoon loaded with cookie batter and catapult dough into the faces of my family. They scrape off what they can and return fire. It's a full-on war. I've got the ammunition. The cookie dough bowl empty, I resort to the big guns. Porcupine stew. Load up a deep metal spoon with hot chunks and fling them. Broth sprays back and they return juicy bits. By the time the rain outside has slacked, there's enough dough and stew on the floor, walls, and ceiling to chink all the cracks and feed a new generation of rats. Bye, guys. I lace up my warm, wet boots and prepare to return to camp. Wait, you forgot something. I turn, look up into the loft, and Anne throws cold coffee into my face. The history of this cabin's sole dish towel in question, I wipe off my sleeve. The pole ladder is heavy and wobbles as I pull it away from the loft, drag it outside, and leave my family stranded in our loving mess. And that is probably one of the best times I had with my family. So we will see you next week. We are almost a few more chapters after this first book, Babe in the Woods. If you get a chance, check out the other books, and we will see you in a week. And always stay hydrated with a beverage of your choice. Bye-bye. See you next week. My boys say hi too.